Good evening. Welcome to the in-person and virtual meeting of the Planning Development Advisory Committee of July the 11th, 2013. Two meetings tonight, one being the Committee of Adjustment and second being an advisory committee. There'll be one minor variance application for consideration by the Committee of Adjustment, and there won't be any consents, but strictly housekeeping items to deal with at the Advisory Committee. Please note that the meeting is video and audio recorded, and all electronic meetings are uploaded to municipality's YouTube page. By registering to participate in a meeting, by electronic means are consenting to have your likeness and comments recorded and posted on YouTube. So I'll call the meeting to order and start with roll call. Chris Pritchard. Here. Paul Sedra. Here. Jeffrey Bourne. Here. Dennis O'Connor. Here. And I, Council Johnson Poulos, I'm present as well. And in attendance, we have our clerk, Courtney Whitebox, with Secretary Treasurer, Lynn Banks, and County Planning Staff, Joanna Salzberg. So we'll do a moment of reflection before we commence the body of the agenda. Okay, let's start. We're on item 4, confirmation of agenda. Would you read the resolution?
That the committee approves the July 11th, 2023 agenda as circulated.
May I have a mover and seconder? Moved by first, second by all in favor? Thank you. So the next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest, I should say. Do we have any? I see none. Thank you. And then would you read the approval of the minutes resolution?
That the Committee of Adjustment approves the minutes from the meeting held June 13th, 2023.
May I have a mover? Moved by Jeffrey and seconded by Dennis. All in favor? Thank you. So the purpose of this hearing is to inform and to provide the public with the opportunity to ask questions or express views with respect to a minor variance application before us today. The township requests you please notify the secretary of the committee by email at lynnbanks@worcester.ca if you wish to be on record and would like to be notified of future hearings and decisions regarding this application. The format of this hearing is as follows. Staff will present information reports specifically outlining the purpose of the application, summary and compliance with township notification submission requirements, and outlining staff comments. The applicant will present a purpose and details of the application and any further relevant information. Following this, the public can obtain clarification, ask questions, and express their views on the proposal. Each person will have 10 minutes to speak maximum. Following this, the members of the committee will likewise can obtain clarification and ask questions. Then the item will be taken into the committee for deliberation, and a decision will be subject to 20-day appeal period. So, Courtney, would you please put the drawing on the board? And we're doing the application for minor variance under Section 45 of Planning Act to be heard by the committee. It's 7.1 minor variance application D13-LIG Brian and Sherilyn Light 4396 Wellington Road 32, concession 2, 555 Township Distance, requesting relief of new comprehensive zoning bylaw 23-2018 as amended from section 4.31C, 12.2, table 12.1, and 12.4. The purpose and effect is to provide relief from section 4.31C, setbacks from the natural environment zone, permit a structure accessory to a dwelling in the natural environment zone as approved by the Conservation Authority to have jurisdiction. Section 12.2, table 12.1, permitted uses other zones to permit an accessory structure. Section 3, item 3, section 12.4, national environment zone requirements to permit an accessory structure. So, Lynn, would you please summarize the application, notification, submission requirements of link staff, agency, and public comments?
Notice of the application was given in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. Notice requirements for the application have been met, and the following comments were received. Township Coastlands Building Department stated that the property owner must obtain a building permit before constructing any accessory building. The building department has no other concerns or comments on this minor variance application. Township Fire Department stated that the department has no concerns with proposal, providing appropriate building permits are obtained and proper emergency vehicle access is maintained for the dwelling units. Source Water stated that since this property is located in a vulnerable area, but the activities as indicated would not create a significant drinking water threat, the application can be screened out and does not require a section 59 notice under the Clean Water Act. And the GRCA has advised that they have no objection to the proposed minor variance application. Information currently available at this office indicates that the subject property contains a watercourse, floodplain, wetland, and the regulated allowance adjacent to these features. Due to the presence of the above noted features, the entire property is regulated by the GRCA, and any future development or other alteration within the regulated area will require prior written approval from the GRCA in the form of a permit pursuant to Ontario Regulation 150/06. They further noted that the proposed minor variance application requests permission to allow the replacement of an accessory structure with a new structure that is larger than the existing structure. And the GRCA has recently issued permit number 285/23 for the proposed accessory structure. And the plans circulated with this application are consistent with the plans approved through this permit. GRCA staff do not anticipate any impacts to the natural hazard features as a result of the proposed development. And they have no objection to the approval of a minor variance application.
And any public comments?
We did receive one public comment. This is from Barbara Bulmer, and her address is 4422 Wellington Road 32. She gives a little background. The Irish Creek runs through my farm from northeast to southwest, crossing the northwest corner of the subject property. Groundwater drainage from both properties flow towards the creek. Southeast corner of my farm is wet, and I assume the same conditions exist on Mr. Bright's property immediately adjacent. If an accessory building were to be placed on the north side of his property adjacent to mine, he would need to bring in fill to bring his property up to road level, but likely require fill to prepare the ground for a structure. My concern is that this activity would force the groundwater onto my southeast field toward the creek, making it necessary to install drainage tiles in the field. Her position is, I object to this application if Mr. Bright plans to place his accessory building on the north side of his property adjacent to my southeast field, which is under cultivation. I do not object to this application if the accessory structure is located behind the existing dwelling, either in the same location as the existing accessory building or in the natural environment zone, assuming GRCA approval directly west of his existing dwelling. And then in parentheses on the aerial map, the area between dwelling west to property ID number. And in this option, Mr. Bright might not need a second access to his property from Wellington Road 32.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll turn it over to the applicant for the record. Would you please state your name and address and present your application?
Okay, my name is Brian Light. I live at 4396 Wellington Road 32. I farm two fields, one that's on Ellis Road and one that's on Wellington Road 32. The green structure you see there was destroyed by the tornado last May that came through my property and took down over 20 trees. It destroyed that building, which is the reason for asking to put a steel building up. The Quonset hut was completely flattened by two trees. I made an insurance claim through North Dumfries for that structure, to which they paid out the value of the structure. So in order to keep my farm equipment dry during the winter, I need another structure, and that is the purpose for this application.
Okay, thank you. All right, Courtney, sorry, then is there any applicant who's registered or asked to be registered to speak?
No, Mr. Chair, there are not.
Okay, Courtney, would you please canvass the audience to see if anybody's there registered or would like to speak?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, we have two members in our attendee section. If any member wishes to make comment on this application, if you can use the raise your hand function, it's just located at the bottom of your screen. Mr. Chair, I don't see anyone raising their hand.
Good, great, thank you. So let's turn it over to the committee members. We'll start with you, Chris. Questions of the applicant.
clarifications, if I may. Do I understand correctly, you've got an existing storage facility that the township has no record of a building permit for?
That was a fabric Quonset hut. I did not realize when I put it up that I needed, nor do most people. And I put it up unknowingly. So.
The building that was destroyed, does this new building go on the same footprint?
Exactly, if you can see the black line.
Yep.
That is where the new building will be. So it is very similar, but just a little larger.
Okay. That helps. And if I understood you correctly, this would be used to store farm and residential equipment.
Yep.
You're not into fueling operations or things that create a fuel spill risk
No,
beyond.
no.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Good. Well,
I'm good. Thank you.
okay, Jeffrey?
The only point I was gonna ask, and I think we clarified that you aren't building it on the north part of your property, it's in the location of the existing building, so your neighbor's concerns aren't really.
Correct.
Yeah,
No, this is right behind the actual house,
right,
beside the other barn that I have.
right, which you will be demolishing, or is it completely
Well,
gone?
the green one is totally gone. When you see the green in the bottom corner of
Yes,
that,
yes.
that's totally gone. It's,
The other building that's there is,
the other building is there is more storage for the stuff we collect as we live.
okay,
And
there
it's
was a permit,
it's a workshop as well.
there was a permit for that one.
That was before I bought it with that building on it.
All right,
Okay. James?
Yeah, just to the drainage issue, when we do a building permit, are we going to address the flow of the water? So that it doesn't impact?
If you look at the purple area, we'll call it,
Mhm.
32 runs pretty much parallel to the top of the screen.
Yeah.
The purple area is a low piece of the ground, so any drainage sort of goes into that purple area. It becomes very mushy in the when there is rain. And it's well vegetated, so the vegetation feeds off of the drainage, but nothing goes into the field. My field that abuts Barb Bomer's property is to the left of that, and none of the drainage goes into the field.
Your field, is it drained?
There is a center point of the field that has a mush pit, we'll call it. And everything sort of drains to that, and it can't be planted.
Okay, I don't know who I should direct this to, but do we have a drainage inspector in the township?
Well, as part of the building permit process, court images.
So through you, Mr. Chair, through the building permit process, there is a final inspection that looks at overall grading if it's been impacted. If it hasn't been impacted and it's just existing conditions on the site, it's not going to be addressed through the building permit. However, our property standards bylaw does address drainage so far that you cannot direct drainage onto your neighbor's lots. So not necessarily look at within your lot lines and what's going on, but property standards would protect neighbors from drainage issues that are intentionally draining.
That sounds very urban. I'm just wondering if it's thinking about it as a agricultural field where the water flows. You know, we have municipal drains that we can have tile outlets to, that sort of thing. So is it addressing the bigger picture? So that if it's, let's take the purple area there, and if we now have a larger footprint and a heavy rain, more water will go into that. And if it is, and this is hypothetical, I'm thinking aloud, but if it overloads that, it will go into the field.
No, it will flow south.
It will flow. Okay, so long but is somebody looking that it does do that? That it does not change or impact the existing field capacity and
Through the building permit process, the answer would be no. That's not being addressed on a bigger scale for a farm lot. It's looking at does the new building permit negatively impact whatever changes were made with it, but the answer to that is no. If there is a bigger problem with drainage on a property, then that would be dealt with if it was impacting neighbors through the property standards bylaw.
So would it be fair to have a condition that we make sure that that is not addressed, or that is not an issue? Because I don't think we're dealing with the bigger picture here, and that would address the neighbors' concern, which might already be done. But whether we use the drainage inspector or whatever process we have here in the township, I'm unaware of.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we don't have municipal drains in the township. I would also suggest that, given that the property is regulated, if there were issues specifically in that hazard, which is the purple area there, we would want to consult with our conservation authority as well. So I think there's mechanisms to address issues if they arise, but I would respectfully suggest it's not through the building permit process necessarily.
Property line from where the building is to Barb Bulmer's property is almost 225 feet. You'd have to have pretty significant rain to fill that drainage area up to the point that, and I've been there for 18 years and never seen water come from the house area into the field.
Your field drains where? To the south,
It sort of drains to the southwest.
so it's draining away from the Ballmer property.
Yes,
And where is its outlet?
it hits the Irish Creek someplace way back in the bush, because I also have 10 acres of bush on the property. So the Irish Creek cuts my, let's see, my northwest corner by about 3 yards. So it just cuts the corner. And then it runs in behind, because in behind my 10 acres of bush is another, I don't know, 20, 30 acres of bush. So that bush takes the water.
My only concern is I don't know where we have addressed the drainage. The conservation authority is maybe looking at flooding, maybe looking at groundwater quality, but are they looking at impacts of farm drainage? Do we have a gap here?
Well, I guess my comment would be is we're replacing a facility on top of it, where a existing facility was. The person who was concerned about the drainage cited areas where she would be concerned if the building was sited, and she also made a comment if there was fill added in. So providing there's no fill, are you assuming to bring in fill?
No, there's been no fill brought in. I have some gravel that I'm going to use to level the extra part up, but
So I look at it from that point of view, we're not changing the existing grading. All we're doing is making it a little bit flatter. It's probably going in by increasing the size by, I don't know, another twofold type of thing, and I don't see that as being insurmountable.
Yeah, there's this issue, and for me, it's an educational issue. But if it comes up again, over when we run into
Well,
that.
I guess we're dealing with.
Yes, I know.
We're doing this specifically one, and I really don't want to belabor this, but we could take that up as a separate issue at a later date, put it on the agenda for
Okay.
asking staff to bring that up for us, so we can understand the process. Okay, so you're good? Okay, so mentioned Phil, trees, are you planning to cut any trees down?
no, the trees already fell down with the windstorm. All the trees that in that area fell down. There was some sizable trees, probably 80-foot trees that came down during the windstorm.
So staff has put a condition in that a tree preservation program. But if you're not providing any, not removing the trees, that condition be moot anyway.
I also am part of the Ontario plan not to cut my forest.
Okay, good.
So I every year send that application in so that I will not cut the 10-acre bush part or any of the other bush that I have.
That's very commendable. Okay, so, Lynn, would you like to read the document out, and I'll ask for a decision? We either approve, oppose it, or ask for deferral. So can you read the conditions out? And the statements, please.
Certainly. So minor variance application D13 LIG Brian and Sherilyn Wade requesting relief from the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 23-2018 as amended from sections 4.31C, 12.2, table 12.1 and 12.4. The purpose and effect is to provide relief from section 4.31C setbacks from the natural environment zone to permit an accessory structure to a dwelling unit in the natural environment zone as approved by the Conservation Authority having jurisdiction. Number 2, section 12.2, table 12.1, permitted uses other zones to permit an accessory structure. And third variance would be from section 12.4, natural environment zone requirements to permit an accessory structure. So the condition would be that any concerns of the Conservation Authority addressed to the satisfaction of the township. We will not require the tree preservation.
That's what we think you would.
Joanna?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, it would be helpful to include that condition so that we can ensure that no trees are being cut down. And in terms of like writing and sending in what their proposal is and showing the footprint of what they're proposing with the building and with the trees on it, so that we can confirm they are being approved. The reason that that condition is on there is because the property is within the environmental protection overlay. So there's a requirement for the township to be satisfied that the woodland isn't being negatively affected. And the official plan also has requirements for the protection of the significant woodland. So it would be helpful to have the confirmation with the building that no trees are to be cut down, so that that could be confirmed and cleared.
Okay, I'll reread the conditions, starting with the first one, that any concerns that the Conservation Authority addressed to the satisfaction of the township. Second condition is that a tree preservation and compensation plan is provided to the township for the purpose of a peer review prior to building permit submission, minimizing the removal of trees to the satisfaction of the township. And third, that the owner enter into a development agreement with the township trust fund for the purpose of a peer review of the tree preservation and compensation plan to include third-party cost recovery.
Okay, so go around the table, it's either approved, opposed, or defers. How would you approve?
I'm in favor of approving. I think no comment, Mr. White, if you do, you to go get a building permit after the fact.
I've already applied for the building.
I meant for the building that was erected without a permit.
Okay.
All? Okay, Jeffrey?
Yeah, approved.
Approved. And I approve as well. So it's approved, subject to 20-day appeal period by somebody who's still opposing. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to new business. Committee of Adjustment. Oh, sorry, did you want to read the motion? Is that the?
Yeah.
Okay, so read the motion, then we can get on.
That minor variance application D13 LIG be approved subject to the conditions listed in the signed decision.
Okay, I have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Chris, second by Dennis. All in favor? Thank you. So let's move into new business. Committee of Adjustment for 2023-003, proposed 2024 meeting dates. So Lynn, would you take us through that?
Certainly. So this report is proposing the meeting dates for next year as per the terms of reference and council's direction. The committee must meet monthly, the second Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. or on another day or time usually agreed upon by the committee, and the dates listed in the report are the dates proposed to be approved by the committee for next year's meeting dates.
So you have a resolution that
Yes. So the resolution is that report 2023-003 be approved.
okay, so any discussions? Please. Okay, so move to approve. That is second by first, all in favor? Okay. Oh, another item, 8.2, I guess you raised a concern. Dennis, you want to elaborate on it, so we could sort of talk about it and perhaps direct staff to provide some information to us of the benefit.
Yeah, in this case. The drainage was fine, but. Right, when we talked about it, nothing was really addressing the agricultural impact. Of putting a building in or moving. The natural drainage. Right? So and we don't have. A drainage inspector, I guess we're on this one, but it's like your fence police. It's the same idea, is if I were to block off. A natural drainage on my property and it backs up and floods your field. There needs to be some way to address that. So my concern is, or my question is. What is the process when we say we set a lot off and put a house on it and the water that was normally flowing to the north now flows to the south onto a guy's field that has to spend $1,000 an acre to put tile in to move it further on.
What do you want to pick up?
So, through you, Mr. Chair, when the building permit is reviewed, so for instance, let's take the example that you provided, where there is a 1 acre lot that's severed and we build a house on it. That new construction is going to include a grading plan. And that grading plan is going to be looked at by engineers to ensure that it doesn't impact off-site drainage or grading. And that's inspected by our building inspector through the final inspection that's done with the building permit, which is for the overall grading to make sure that it matches what was proposed and it isn't impacting. So that's how it's reviewed at the building permit development stage. If there was another incident, like you suggested, where perhaps one property owner made modifications to their property, maybe not through development, maybe through a site alteration or what have you, and that ultimately impacted their neighbor's drainage. We would have two tools to look at that: the site alteration bylaw, depending on the scale of the site alteration to cause the issue. And again, I know the property standards does sound like it only impacts more urban areas, but the township has utilized our property standards bylaw for instances like that in our rural areas where somebody has made a change that's impacted drainage on their neighboring property, whether that was it's more with property standards that it's increasing the flow of water or directly directing the flow of water onto somebody's property. So there are regulatory bylaws in place and checks and balances through the building permit process to ensure that's not happening. Now, if it's drainage that's within your own property that's causing concern or altering a wetland or having impacts to the environment, that likely is a conservation issue that we would look to help for that. But again, our bylaw for property standards is how it impacts neighbors, and then we have our site alteration bylaw and the regulatory agencies that would assist for any sort of site alteration work that's done with the permit. I don't know if that helps to address some of the issues, but there are mechanisms in place that we have. And we do rely on a complaint-based system, so we don't proactively look for this. We do wait for the property owners to let us know this is happening.
I still have a concern that we don't have an agricultural focus when we're dealing with drainage. The engineers are probably looking at getting the water or not flooding the property next door, but it is maybe directing a flow or an increase into a farmer's field. They're saying they do or they should, or I'm not hearing that, I guess. I'm just hearing that we have an engineer that's looking at drainage.
So through Mr. Chair, typically, when possible, it's directed towards the ditch. So you're directing, or swales, whatever there may be in that case, but it is being directed towards that outlet. If it's a residential property, we're looking for, okay, is this water coming towards the drainage ditch near the road where it should? Or in the event where we have a subdivision, we would have swales that again would look to direct that towards the ditch. So I don't know if there would be a circumstance where directing flow of water from a development on somewhere else would be appropriate. But it sounds like maybe perhaps what you're thinking of is there could be other impacts that are maybe taking away flows of water from farmers' fields.
You can have that impact too, but I'm more concerned that we built a building that now doesn't hold water. It expels it, and if we send it to the north, because it will trickle away, but we have the 100-year rain or we have a heavy rain. And it now starts to put a past field capacity and it impacts the crop. So the only choice for that farmer then is to deal with removing that by putting tile in this field, which he didn't have to do before you had pavement or a building or whatever. So if you're saying that the process is to make sure it flows to an outlet away from fields or to the best outlet, then that would alleviate my concern, but I'm not hearing that that's exactly the focus.
So I'm not the chief building official, so I don't want to creep into his realm, but looking at it from an enforcement perspective from my department, when we do get concerns about water flowing where it shouldn't and letting properties, fields, that sort of thing, we do look to see is the water being directed towards the outlet where it should go, which in most cases for these residential lots is going to be the ditch line at the road. Obviously, there's other instances with very large lots where they're going to have different topography where that wouldn't make sense. But in general, with the new builds, we're looking for those outlets not to be directed towards others' properties and be directed towards the ditch or the swale.
Okay, well, I just hope we do it proactively versus a complaint.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, certainly it's done through the new building, like when there's a new build that way. Of course, there's alterations that can be made which cause issue.
Okay, anybody else for items on the new business? Okay, great. So let's go on to adjournment of committee of adjustment. So can you please read the resolution?
That the Committee of Adjustment hereby adjourns at 7:32 p.m.
Yeah, mover. And second, please, all in favor. Thank you.